how do you actually use this? Like, how would say a hiring manager or someone in HR or a recruitment team, how would they use this?
Well, the way I would always recommend to use it is to actually it's like a checklist. So you want to put the key element on a A4 piece of paper and print it out. It's really good that when you actually are interviewing someone, you can actually easily take some notes, and nothing beats paper from my perspective. So the outcome of it is effectively you fill this checklist for a candidate, and the advantage of having that also printed out is when you're having an interview, for example, and obviously the interview is time boxed because it's effectively a meeting, you know that you have to cover certain areas and the conversation flows naturally. The engineering persona doesn't give you a script, it gives you areas that you have to cover. But then you know that when the conversation naturally stalls at some point, you know what areas you have covered and what areas you haven't covered. It also gives you the advantage that if a conversation goes really well and you've covered all the areas early, it gives you more extra time. And as well as the conversely, if you're actually focusing too much on one area and you haven't asked anything about other areas, it helps you actually fill the gaps. So you use it effectively as a printout. That's always my suggestion.
Got it. Got it. Okay, I follow you. So like when it comes down to feedback, do you use that to relay, engage?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, that's a very good point. We once you have actually created this kind of checklist and you know how is the candidate matching your persona, you decide then whether to proceed or not. And if you decide not to proceed, it's really, really important in terms of candidate experience to be able to provide some feedback or around what areas the candidate isn't actually excelling and why you're actually making a decision that you're making. People take feedback if it's factually motivated. So many times I've been involved in the interview process where companies would just reject based on very fluffy and unfactual reasons. You know, you go in for an interview, you've submitted your CV, and then they turn back saying you didn't have enough experience. That's just a lame way to find an excuse because the experience is on my CV. So it's not that it can be shortened or increased by me talking. So the reason why companies resort to those kind of very, dismissive feedback is that because they have nothing else to say in writing. They don't have an engineering persona. But let's imagine that we're looking for someone that actually has a level of curiosity. All right, that's one of the elements that I usually look for. So I always ask about new technologies they're looking into, something new and exciting they're playing with. Now, if the answer is no, I haven't done anything except my 9 to 5 job, well, that's a good point in itself, saying we were looking for someone that would have more side projects, for example. And that's a fact that cannot be debated, if that makes sense. And people take feedback on facts. People don't take feedback on gut feeling or, you know, dismissive random facts, if that makes sense. But,
Got it. Got
motivated
it.
and specific.
Okay, okay. So just to relay, basically, this is a way to communicate better in the recruitment process effectively, on feedback, and also targeting what you're looking for in short.
Yes, absolutely. It's a way to relay feedback as well as a way to do effective pre-screening. For example, once you've built your engineering persona, and if you have an HR team on board that does some pre-screening of candidates, what you can do is create a series of questions that your HR team just need to ask. And once you have answers on those questions, you can already determine who can proceed in the process and who is it would be just a waste of time. So it's effectively a pre-screening tool. You don't want to have a million people in your process. You want to have the smallest amount of people, but with the highest amount of conversion, i.e., the candidates are matching the required criteria. The candidates are a potential good hire. You should only bring in the funnel potential good hires. So this can help a lot in that space as well.
So I've got a thought that's just prompted of some of the things you're saying here, and in my experience, I've noticed this as well, is that do you ever get the problem where you've got a team of people in the interview process. So, for example, I'll give you a blog standard example of, look, they go through the recruitment team, the CV gets submitted, there's a technical test of some sort or somewhat, or, it's later on in the process. And then they meet with potentially, right, if a company switched on enough, directly with the CTO or with the person who's going to hire them, or potentially with a technical team. There's a lot of people involved in this process, as you can understand. So miscommunication can happen. So applying this across the team, what are your thoughts on, using this to actually manage feedback across also your team?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, you're talking about in the interview process, so that the people are looking exactly for the same. Um,
100%. Yes. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely, yes. Yeah, I mean, I've been in it's funny how you bring this up because I have been in interview processes for people that non-technical candidates, for example, and this by the way, this engineering persona approach applies even outside of the engineering space, of course. It won't be engineering persona, but the thing is, I've been in interviews for, I don't know, product people, scrum masters, testers, and manual testers. And what happens is that you actually have a panel to interview, and then there is actually not a clear outcome of the interview itself. So because you haven't decided up front how you're going to judge the candidate coming in, there's not a definitive answer. You come out of the interview and someone says, I love the guy. And someone else says, no, actually, it was weak on this. And so I've been in a situation where we end up with this kind of funny majority vote that is usually a symptom of a bad process. So same thing applies at an engineering level. If you're having a panel interview with your senior guys, as well as, for example, the CTO, the truth is, in order for everybody to be able to contribute positively to the interview in terms of saying, yes, I think he is a good candidate, no, it's not, you have to have something written down. You have something that has been thought
Mm.
through.
Correct. So talking around misconceptions, like around personas, and these could exist. And we're not sort of, advocating that this is the, silver bullet to hiring engineers effectively in any marketplace. But I think it's a starting point. I mean, would you agree? I mean, it's basically a competitive advantage on getting a communication on point, and adding a bit more value in that recruitment process. I mean, especially if you're doing it at scale.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, it's about doing that bit of work up front to be able to make your life easier afterwards. And it's about creating a system that can help inform an outcome. That's as simple as this. So I usually say this way, if you do the hard things up front, then life turns out to be easy.
Correct, correct. So I think, there's probably two different types of people who this will appeal to. I think from a hiring leader perspective, it's, someone who has a role that, they need to scale out. So they've got, a number of hires over a period of time, or period of growth they're aiming at. And or potentially there's a similar role that they know that they have to hire that just happens every year a number of times. So I mean, that's obviously going to justify the time invested.